Once upon a time, there was a woman who sold akara in Ijapa's village. This akara was the most delicious of the 7 kingdoms. The akara was so delicious that everyone from the 7 kingdoms came to Aremu village to eat akara olororo. After a while, Aderunu, the woman that fried the akara, decided she would send her daughter Adeshewa to go to all the 7 kingdoms to hawk akara and to make sure our akara is available for people who wanted it without having to come to Aremu village to eat the akara. To help her mother address this challenge, Adeshewa hawked the akara for her mother from town to town. It so turned out that of the 7 kingdoms, Aremu village was the first. And the young girl always passed in front of Ijapa's hut every day as she made her way to sell the akara. And Ijapa, as you know, being a lazy person, was not the creature that valued work. If he woke up in any given day, he had no stream he designed to go, nor did he till much of his ground that the king gave him after he was nearly killed in his rebellion. And instead of working, he rather roamed the entire village square looking for old saga-toothed women who he could convince to give him free food daily. This was the design of his life. However, something worked to his favor, for it is said that he who the gods didn't favor with hard work, he favored with talent. And Ijapa had one tiny talent that always gave him an edge. Ijapa knew how to drum. Not only was he a great drummer, he was also a great singer. However, Ijapa never used this gift as a worthy profession. Rather, he used his talents to steal. Hence, no one in the village even knew Ijapa could sing, nor did anyone know he could drum. For had they known he could drum, they would have patronized him, and maybe Ijapa would not have been this cunning, nor would he have entered into this trouble, which was soon to drive Aremu village into its coffers. Now, Ijapa incidentally had a strange love for akara, especially akara olororo. And it so turned out that this very akara was the same akara that Adeshewa hawked past the front of Ijapa's hut every day. Every time Adeshewa passed in front of Ijapa's hut hawking akara, Ijapa would get so taken by it that he knew nothing else to do other than to design methods by which he could eat this akara by all means without the need to pay for it like everyone else did. So one day, an idea came to his mind. He thought to himself, what if I scare this small girl so much that she threw the akara away and ran, leaving him with the delicious akara all to himself? That sounded like a plan. So Ijapa got some dried bark of iroko tree, some jingle bells, and some palm leaves. With these, he fashioned strings that he wound round his body, and by the time he was done, he was looking like a demon. With jingle bells around his waist and a mask of white chalk on his face, he looked both dangerous and scary. So with his drum in hand, he hid himself behind the bush path where Adeshewa took to hawk akara. And as she passed in front of him on this fateful day, Ijapa began to drum, sing, and dance. Oloko gberi wo wa gberi oloko lo fi ṣaya ṣọlá gberi oloko lo fi ṣaya sọ́tọ̀ gberi oloko gberi wo wa gberi oloko lo fi ṣaya sọ́tọ̀ gberi. With feet laced with jingle bells, he stomped his feet, and every stomp made sounds as though hundreds of people were passing by. The entire bush vibrated so violently at the sound of his dancing and music. This became so scary that Adeshewa threw down her basket of akara as Ijapa expected and ran away to tell her mother. Ijapa, on the other hand, carried the basket of akara and turned into the bush. His plan had worked flawlessly. Adeshewa, on the other hand, ran home, sobbing deeply, and narrated the whole incident to her mother, Aderinu. Aderinu was so displeased that the whole day she refused to eat. More than that, she refused to believe her daughter. She was certain that Adeshewa was lying. So she fetched her koboko and beat Adeshewa mercilessly on this day. She beat her so much that her skin became sore and wounded. So sore that night she couldn't lay properly on her mat. She turned left and right. She sat down at times in the middle of the night, and then she tried desperately to get some sleep, but the pain in her body was so much that she could not sleep. This was the pain inflicted on her skin by her mother, which was first inflicted by that wicked Ijapa. So the next day, not minding the pain on Adeshewa's body, Aderin, her mother, made another Akara Olororo and gave it to her to hawk again. Bro, Adesewa, all wapa lo bi Akara un, all si ta Akara un ni oni. Baby ori o pada wale o ma puro fún mi. Adeshewa was both unhappy and worried, because if her mother had beaten her so badly for a crime she didn't commit, what would be her fate if the same problem occurred again? She talked about this so much, but how could she refuse her mother? So she carried the Akara and went again along the same bush path, just like before. As she had feared, the moment Adeshewa got to the road as at other times, the music started. The bush roared violently again as before. This time, she was duly terrified. She even thought it was a beast roaring, and in that instant, Ijapa jumped out, and this time, with his children, with a chalk white mask on their face, they began singing. Oloko beri wo wa, oloko beri wo wa, beri oloko beri wo wa, beri oloko lo fi ṣaya ṣọlá, beri. Adeshewa threw her basket of Akara and ran violently to her house. Ijapa, as usual, and his children carried their prized possession and went straight home with both glee and joy. However, the days of their pain began to count from that day. When Adeshewa ran home, the mother sensed a pattern. If her daughter was lying, she wouldn't possibly lie twice in a row. How could she lie yesterday and I beat her so mercilessly, and then she will come and lie again with all the pain in her body? Something didn't add up. Besides, it was Adeshewa. It wasn't like she has caught her lying before. So this time, she took her seriously, and with a heart full of regret, she hugged her precious daughter and begged for her forgiveness. The next day, however, the mother decided that she would follow Adeshewa to the other village to sell Akara. Her plan was simple. She wanted to see with her own eyes this mysterious creature that bedeviled the bush path, and this was precisely what she did. Early the next morning, after preparing the Akara, she loaded it on her daughter's head and led her along the bush path, both nervous and ready. As they reached the bush path, Ijapa and his children was waiting for them, chalk white-faced and jingle bells on their feet. With their drums in hand, they started the show of shame again. Only this time, they jumped on the road as they began drumming and dancing. Oloko beri wo wa, oloko beri wo wa, beri oloko beri wo wa, beri oloko lo fi ṣaya ṣọlá, beri lo fi yaya ṣọlá, beri oloko beri wo wa, beri oloko beri wo wa, beri oloko lo fi ṣaya ṣọlá. Aderinu this time was the first to run away. She left her daughter Adeshewa behind and ran with her tail behind her legs. The moment her daughter saw her mother run, she dropped her basket of Akara and disappeared behind the bush path as well. Again, Ijapa and his sons carried the basket of Akara and disappeared behind the thick bushes to his hut. They ate the Akara with so much delight that they knew this was a path they should follow. Oh, what a wrong decision they made. The next day, the mother decided this was a matter for the king to hear. Whatever it was, collecting her akara from her hand had to stop. So she ran to the king. On getting to the palace, she bowed before the king and said,
"Kabiyesi, there is urgent news. For the past 4 days, I have sent my daughter to hawk akara in the next village beyond Aremu. And for every day she went, she always came back complaining that something made her throw away her basket. And she always ran home, neither selling nor bringing any money back. Nor did she even come back with any akara. This is the 4th consecutive days this has begun happening, my king. Something has to be done."
The king was alarmed. He said, "Why has this happened that no one told me?" Aderinu replied,
"I didn't know what to do. Initially, I thought my daughter was lying and that she was stealing my money. Until yesterday when I decided to follow her to the bush path."
The king said,
"What did you now see on the bush path?"
She replied,
"I saw 3 monstrous creatures with jingle bells on their feet, dancing and beating drums. They looked like monsters and demons in the forest. They were so terrifying that the moment I saw them, I ran away and even fainted when I got home. It was my daughter that did her best to wake me up. When I fully regained my strength overnight, I decided to run to you, my king."
The king said,
"Very well. Which bush path is this? I have to see this for myself."
Aderinu replied,
"Yes, my king, I will take you there. It's along the bush path that connects Aremu village to Odoyalaro."
At this, the king stood up and followed the woman, determined to see things for himself. Even Adeshewa followed along. The moment the king reached the bush path, the king instructed the woman to start announcing akara oloro as usual.
Oya, Aderinu, sọ fọ́mọ rẹ kó bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní polówó àkàrà.
And at the sound of it, Ijapa jumped out of the bush path. Then he and his son started singing and dancing.
Olóko gbérí wò wá gbérí olóko ló fi ṣàyà ṣọlá gbérí olóko ló fi ṣàyà sọ́tọ̀ gbérí olóko gbérí wò wá gbérí olóko ló fi ṣàyà sọ́tọ̀ gbérí.
And surprisingly, even the king and his guards ran away at the sight of them. He even forgot his cap on the road and ran away. His guards also ran after him. Not one of them stopped until they had reached the palace. That same moment, the king called his council of elders and summoned a meeting.
Ọba ní kí n sọ fún gbogbo àwọn ìjòyè àti àwọn òṣèlú pé kí ẹ dìde ní wàràǹṣeṣà kí ẹ máa pọ̀ nínú ààfin ọba. Ọba ní ọ̀rọ̀ ńlá kan ó ń bẹ tí a gbọ́dọ̀ sọ báyẹn bí a ó ṣe mú.
They began to deliberate how they might discover these hoodlums. Then it was decided that this was a matter only Fokoko, the village guard, could resolve. Of all the valiant men of Aremu kingdom, Fokoko was the chief of them all. He had both skill and cunning. The king told Fokoko, "If you can fish out these hoodlums from our village, I will give you my daughter's hand in marriage." Fokoko was pleased, so he set out to work. Fokoko hatched a plan. He would set a trap along all the forest path and double his trap as the exact location the hoodlums were usually sighted. Then he told Adeshewa and her mother to prepare another akara olororo for the inducement. When they get to the bush path, she would call as before. And the moment they begin announcing the delicious akara olororo and the thieves show up in the forest, the trap will catch them. This was precisely what they did. Early in the morning, Fokoko had laced the entire bush path with traps. And as they arrived at the bush path, Adeshewa began calling as usual. At that moment, again, the bush path began to roar. Drums, music, and dancing began.
Olóko gbérí wò wá gbérí olóko ló fi ṣàyà ṣọlá gbérí olóko ló fi ṣàyà sọ́tọ̀ gbérí olóko gbérí wò wá gbérí olóko ló fi ṣàyà sọ́tọ̀ gbérí.
But unknown to Ijapa, as they jumped out of the bush, the trap caught the jingle bells and up they went into the sky. Ijapa and his 3 sons caught. Finally, the trap lifted them up from the earth and above, high into the tree. The moment Aderinu glanced at him, they discovered for the first time that it was Ijapa that was tormenting the entire village.
Ijapa, ṣé pé wọ́n ní ń bẹ lẹ́yìn orò tí ń jí mi lákàrà? Aláìdáa ni ọ́. Gbogbo owó mi tí mo fi dín àkàrà ló ti jí lọ tán.
She was duly disappointed. But unfortunately for Ijapa, the trap had only held him loosely at the jingle bell. And as Fokoko lingered, not knowing what to do with them, the ropes of the trap went loose. and they fell to the hard floor and cracked their shell. This was how Ijapa's shell broke, and to this day, Ijapa's shell remained cracked. After this, Fokoko took Ijapa to the king's palace. The whole crowd gathered, and the shame was unbearable. First, his shell was cracked and painful. And secondly, the whole village was watching the three of them caught in the web of Fokoko's trap. The whole village was disappointed. They shook their head in shame, looking at Ijapa. Oh, how the respectable had fallen. The king stood up on his feet and ordered Ijapa to be locked in the dungeon and kept there permanently till he changed his mind. Then the king called Fokoko.
You have made us proud. The people of Aremu Kingdom thank you deeply for what you have done. I give you my daughter Ojuolakwe's hand in marriage to you. She shall be your wife for as long as you live.
Then the whole crowd cheered, and everyone walked quietly to their home, shaking their head at how Ijapa had embarrassed himself. This story teaches us that when one decides not to work, but always relies on other dishonorable means to earn a living that is not from hard labor, grave consequences usually befall them, and the scars they incur often remain as indelible marks forever. And for Ijapa, this indelible mark was beyond that he was put in the dungeon. Ijapa got a cracked shell, and that cracked shell remained cracked forever.